Thank you so much, Lisa. My name is Nasha Mukaratirwa. I am Zimbabwean, but based in Johannesburg, South Africa. I have a very commercial background, but currently working in the NGO space as a consultant or affiliate. Um, Growing up, I've always wanted to be a marketer. I think that will explain my secret that I'm going to speak about a little later on. But when I started my career, I started in banking and insurance, and I was also involved with corporate social responsibility projects. That's when I discovered that I think my skills are actually more needed in the NGO space compared to the commercial space where they're looking at the bottom line. Because personally, myself, I wanted things that also had impact on the humanitarian sector. So that's why I decided to move to NGO space where I could resource mobilize and put the money aspect in NGO space. And then my best kept secret is something that I've always wondered. Growing up, my mom thought I was very good. I had a very good memory, and I still do. Um, so she thought maybe I was supposed to study something like law or something to do with history. And then other parts of my members of my family thought maybe I should study something medical. But inwardly, I knew that I was supposed to study something that had to do with finances and marketing. Why? Because I remember from a very young age, I grew up at a mission school. My mother was a teacher there. So we had one local shop that was actually there. And I remember one day I was telling my best friend, I think I was in the first grade, that I wonder why this guy has a shop here. If I were him, I was going to open a shop, get things from town and sell them, but I would put some money on top. So back then I didn't know that's what they call profit. And I didn't know that businessman was actually doing that for money, but I thought he's just doing it for the social aspect of it. But because I already understood, my mind was aligned to understanding profit so much or making money. And then to my same best friend, the other time we were painting and we had gold paint, I asked her, can we put these stones in our gold paint and let them dry and then sell it to people as gold? And we did exactly that. And we did exactly that, hoping that would get money. Fortunately, because my mom, I think she was starting to see that I'm very much business minded. She actually bought the stones from us and gave us money to buy some candy. So yeah, that's one of the secrets that I have to share with you today. I'm happy to be here and sharing my experiences. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nyasha. And I can see you became a business lady when you were very young and a creative one at that. Hopefully, you
Yeah.
can share with us some of the innovative practices you've been employing in your work as well. So, next we have Award. Award, please briefly introduce yourself to our audience and also share with us one fun fact about yourself.
Hi, everyone. I hope you can hear me. My name is Awur Ayecho. I have been in this sector for a little over 10 years, doing different things. Currently, I have landed on fundraising. So I've been doing that since 20 officially, like full time, since 2019. And the org development side that I do is actually primarily for the purposes of building an end-to-end fundraising process. So I like to build processes that strengthen institutions and also ensure some form of sustainability when it comes to fundraising processes. Mine is to encourage organizations and people with any kind of passion projects to always budget for and plan for fundraising. So that's why I got really interested in it. Besides that, I've been I want to say activist, but not really. But I have been passionate about human rights work, specifically human rights education and housing rights. So yeah, that's how I kind of got my in the NGO sector. It was through human rights. Something about myself. I don't know if I should say this, considering I'm about to go into a webinar that's all about details and knowing what you're talking about, but I was a child at the time, so I think I'll be okay. I think I was about 5, maybe 6 years old. And there had been frequent blackouts up to that point when I kind of shared what I'm about to tell you. So I've always been curious about how things work and about how things are. But then there's this particular evening, I think it was like on a Wednesday or Thursday or something, and I had a bit of homework to do from nursery school, which seemed very important at the time. And then to step away from it, I took a walk with my mom to a shop that was close to where we were staying. So on our way there, because we had a blackout that day, so on our way there, there were a few vehicles on the road. There's a bit of traffic. And I remember being very, very incensed about it. I was really pissed. And I expressed to my mother, I don't understand our Kenya power. Why is it that we do not have power in the house, but all these vehicles out here have lights? And instead of answering what I was like answering, because I wasn't even asking a question, like I was just expressing a lot of frustration about that situation. And she just laughed. Like she just laughed. And then when we got to the shop, she repeats the same thing to Haile. Haile is the name of the shopkeeper. And then he also just laughs. And I'm here confused. Why are you people laughing? Are you laughing because I'm angry? Is it funny that a child is angry about this whole thing? And then now later on, like a day later, is when she explains to me, oh no, they ran on batteries in the vehicles. It's not Kenya Power. So yeah, I realized that day, you know how you're told in class there are no stupid questions? Yeah, I think sometimes there are stupid reactions. But yeah, please don't repeat this out there. I'm a serious person in this society. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Awar, for that experience. And I'm sure many of us have had almost similar ones as well. So lastly, let me invite our lovely Beatrice to also briefly introduce herself to the audience and share with us her best kept secrets. Then we can delve into the main conversation. Beatrice, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you so much. Hi, everyone. My name is Beatrice Okech, but everyone calls me B. So please feel free to refer to me as such in your minds as we go forward. I like to identify myself as an intersectional feminist who is very passionate about sexual and reproductive health and gender equality. And I was fortunate to start my career at AMREF Health Africa, specifically the youth initiative Y-ACT, that is Youth in Action. And there I kind of found my passion and footing around advocacy for youth-led initiatives in the 2 spaces that I've just mentioned. And I've since then dived a little bit into different spaces within the development space or the global health space, with my most recent role being advocacy and campaigns manager at Transform Health, working primarily on issues of digital health and specifically the policy and influencing sort of space. So a lot of my work, I would say my career has primarily revolved around the global health space and in the NGO space, and kind of dabbled in different sort of organizations, all working with young people and youth-led and women-led community-based organizations, just to support them and provide technical support in the different roles that I've taken up. When it comes to a secret or a fun fact about me, unfortunately, mine is not very funny or as interesting as the ones that have come before me. So apologies for being the anticlimactic end, but under the right circumstances and with the right motivation, preferably monetary, I can do pretty much any accent, I can pick them up very quickly. So I can, depending on where you find me and how I'm feeling, I might be able to do an accent or two for you. So yeah, that's me. Lovely to meet all of you, and I'm excited for this conversation.
Thank you so much, B. And that is so commendable. That is so cool. Hopefully one day we will, get to see that side of you. Okay, our lovely audience, that is our panelists, and I hope, just by them sharing their fun facts and their best kept secrets, you have been able to relate with them and also to feel that they're just as funny and human as you are. So, and also just to break ice for our conversation. So I will just quickly help us to dive into that conversation today. As I mentioned, our topic today is navigating the social impact ecosystem via affiliation. And just briefly I'm going to invite Victor and Awor to share with us how do they define the term affiliate and what does affiliateship for them mean, and if possible share an experience either present or previous whereby they have had to play the role of an affiliate. And hopefully this will help us understand our topic today. So Awor and Victor, we can start with Awor, then go to Victor. How do you define the term affiliate in the context of social impact consulting? And feel free to share an example previously or currently whereby you have played in this role. Over to you.
Okay, thank you. I would say I haven't really experienced it in social impact consulting, but for impact work, if I would say it like that. Although previously, my understanding of affiliate is in association with, you're associated with someone or with an organization, without really being part of it on a day-to-day. But you support certain functions as someone associated with that organization. And previously, before the experience I'm going to share with you, I understood affiliateship as a form of marketing for businesses. So that's how I understood it. It was based on commission, right? So that's how I understood it. So I think I would say my first experience with being part of like an affiliate program in a for impact setting was for this institution called Spire. So it was just kind of starting out. And what they were doing is a lot of this skills building for young people, especially young people in university or recent graduates, especially in terms of soft skills, in terms of a bit of introduction into things like project management. And the whole goal was to create some form of exposure to that kind of work. And why I'm saying it was for impact is because they were established as an education institution and they were a business. However, what they were doing was towards skills building. So what else can you essentially learn outside of the classroom? And we have multiple students from different disciplines. And how we got into that affiliate program is we went through the program ourselves, and those who are interested were essentially invited to, and our core role as affiliates was to evangelize. So our role was to talk about Spire, what our experience was, and to invite like-minded people or our peers who would be interested in that kind of program. So I would say that that's the kind of my first affiliate relationship. And it was quite fortuitous because there's a lot of things I realized I learned from that experience in Spire that kind of carried me through up till now, trying to build my own practice. So yeah, I would say that was my understanding of affiliateship from a for impact point of view. It's really onboarding the ideas and the values of an organization and sharing what you know about it and inviting people to experience that. Thank you.
Thank you, Abur. Our lovely audience, I hope you are taking notes for our open plenary later on. And Victor, same, the floor is yours. How would you define the term affiliate in the context of social impact consulting, or even in any other space that you've been to, as Abur's example?
Thank you. And maybe just like my colleague, I've not experienced affiliate directly, as I'm going to very soon. So if you come back to me in a few months, I'll be able to give you a better and more concrete answer. I promise you that. But maybe just a classic definition of what an affiliate is. To me, it's a profession who collaborates with any organization or a network, and also contributes their expertise towards achieving a shared goal, without being necessarily a full-time staff. And this relationship is basically of mutual benefit to both the affiliate and the organization, as the affiliate offers their specialized knowledge, skills, and insights to the problem, while the host will be able to offer access to resources, networks, and opportunities for the impact work. If I can try, because there are different kinds of affiliations. There's institutional, corporate, community, and professional affiliations. For me, if I could use affiliation by consulting and use my current role, it has allowed me to maybe leverage a broader spectrum, because as the lead consultant for the ILO project of the COP, I'm managing 15 organizations, and most of these range from MDAs to corporates and NGOs like Safaricom, eMobilis, and many others, and Microsoft also involved there. So it gives me that leverage to tap into a broader spectrum of resources and expertise. And it also broadens my network and provides those opportunities both to myself, to those 15 organizations, and even to the larger COP group, because a COP is divided into like 3 layers. So the bigger COP will also benefit from that, and there's a lot of knowledge exchange. For now, I'll leave it at that. As I said, if you call me back, I'll be able to tell you what an affiliate actually does in future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Victor, for sharing with us the definition and also your experience. So I will invite Nasha and B to also, just based on their understanding of what an affiliate is or experiences they have previously had, if they can share with us some of the best practices that they have adopted as individuals in their organizations or organizations they have previously supported, or they have been able to witness in their journey as consultants, that can help us to further understand what affiliation is. So we can start with B, then Nasha. Over to you.
All right. Okay. Thanks. So I'll kind of look at this in 2 ways as I answer this question, just sort of coming from the point of where I've hired consultants before to carry out different pieces of work in the projects that I've worked in, and also having worked as a consultant myself. And I think some of the things that I've learned along the way, or some of the best practices that I sort of incorporated or have seen in the field of work, has been, one of them has been sort of leveraging complementary strengths. And this is also just, it comes from recognizing that sometimes based on different pieces of work, an organization might not have the necessary skill set that is required to maybe push through a certain project or a certain piece of work. And in and I think this is the biggest relevance for affiliation, or for a for an affiliate where they come in and offer a specific strength or a capability that then contributes to or enhances the overall effectiveness of an organization or of a project. And also thinking of, based on that as well, I think one of the most important things that comes in, when we're leveraging complementary strengths of these affiliates, another important thing would be how do we build long-term relationships with them as well? And I think that's been something that's been very front and center in my own career as well, building relationships with the people that I've worked with and the consultants that I've hired in the past to ensure that by having long-term partnerships, we're able to establish deeper trust and have better coordination and more sustainable sort of social impact. Because when you bring on board an affiliate or when you're working as an affiliate, you're kind of temporary in a sense. So you might not be able to sort of be part and parcel of the culture of an organization or of the work that an organization does. So I find that by sort of building longer term relationships instead of one-off assignments, it then sort of creates an environment where the affiliate is able to also buy into the goals of an organization or of a project, where they're able to sort of really get to know what the project is about, and also kind of to adopt the ethos of the work that they're doing into the work that they're also doing, and ultimately sort of achieve better objectives. And I think that also kind of breaks down the impersonal barrier of affiliation, because sometimes I think you're kind of outside of the organization, so you might not be able to sort of contribute to the culture or to the systems within an organization. But I think by having these longer term relationships, you're able to sort of create a niche, so to speak, for yourself within that organization, and also ultimately contribute to the goals of said organization or project, I would say. So yeah, over to you, Nasha.
Thank you once again, Lisa. So for me, in my experience as a affiliate, and also at some point I employed affiliates and consultants, one of the best practices that I came to take note of was clear communication and transparency. So because these are two people or individuals in an organization that are trying to align to achieve a similar goal, there is need to have clear communication and not rely so much on assumptions. This means that you also need to manage the goals, the expectations, to ensure that everybody is aligned. And then secondly, I think there's also need for mutual respect and trust, because obviously for you to have a relationship that's established and a healthy working relationship, you need to trust the other party. And then also one thing that I also noted, and sadly probably I learned it out of an experience, is having defined roles and responsibilities, which are very clear and if possible written and signed. Because sometimes there are some areas probably in the project that get neglected, and then the blame is spread on everyone or on certain individuals, yet they actually didn't know and it wasn't clear to them that it was their role or responsibility. And then during the relationship, depending on the duration of the contract, the affiliate or the consultant, with the primary organization, there's need for regular monitoring and evaluation to see how the relationship is going, if the goals are being attained, and everything is working on well. And then lastly, I think it's also very important to get an affiliate or consultant that shares the same vision and values with the organization that they are going to work with. So based on my experience, I think those are the 5 best practices that I've learned so far. Thank you. Lisa, you're muted.
Apologies. Thank you so much, Nyasha and we, for those amazing examples and also best practices that you have shared. And you will notice that some of what you have shared will also keep coming up in, as the conversation progresses. And there you mentioned something around strategic relationships, because most of the times affiliateship is very temporary. So I am just going to pick, some of your sentiments and ask Victor, what strategies have you used or do you think are best in terms of maintaining a meaningful and ethical client relationship? Because in consultancy, as B has mentioned, it is very temporary. Once the contract is up, most likely you will not see each other for a while, right? So as you're engaging and even post the assignment, what are some of the strategies that you think affiliates and consultants can begin to embrace around the issues of meaningful and ethical relationship management?
Thank you, Auntie Lisa. And just to build on what especially Nasha said as well as B, it seems like I'll just be repeating that and just reinforcing that. I think as Nasha counted them out to be 5, I think I had maybe more or less the same 5. There's transparency, accountability, respect and empathy is important, confidentiality, and consistent when it comes to that post-engagement. So if we talk about transparency, then you have to be a little bit clear about what it is you want, and especially also want to be vulnerable, because the vulnerability also shows that you're only human. All of us can make mistakes. If it's billing, you show them, yes, this is what is being paid, and this is what I'm going to pay you, and this is the reasons why I'm not going to pay you A, B, C, D. So transparency is very important. Accountability, yes, we have to take responsibility for the outcomes and be able to say that, yes, I claim this, whether it's good or it's bad. And I think here there's a Chinese saying that says, he who blames others has a long way to go. He who blames himself is halfway there, and he who doesn't blame anyone has actually achieved what they set out to do. So with that comes with a lot of accountability, and it will stress the fact that the more accountable you are, the more efficient you will be, and you will see things moving along. So the next one is respect and empathy. You have to value each other's perspective. Logic is not universal, neither is it linear. Whatever might be logical to me might not necessarily be logical to you. So you must be able to open up with those perspectives. You have to understand other people's needs, where they're coming from. I've heard most people say that most leaders don't want to know the process, they just want to see results. But for me, I try to think about it differently. If I don't know the struggles that you're going through, then I will not be able to know how difficult, how challenging this result that I'm looking for is that easy or hard to attain. So it's good to be able to understand the constraints that everybody's going through to achieve that. Confidentiality, of course, that is very obvious. We need to protect each other's information and maintain it to be able to build on integrity. Consistent post the engagement. So this is a good opportunity to be able to follow up. You have some regular check-in, something that I have recommended even in the past, especially when it comes to something like monitoring and evaluation. Give it some time, say, I'll be able to check on you after 6 months or 1 year. And in that 1 year, I'll come and see whatever I designed for you, whether it's a framework, is it actually working? Did somebody drop the ball? Because I might have trained or given you a framework, then the manager that was in charge actually left the organization. So then somebody might have dropped the ball. So it's good to be able to come back and find out what actually happened to the framework. Is it okay? I can give you a refresher course if you need. And this way, the relationship goes on. You can also refer them to somebody else just to show that I've been thinking about your organization post our engagement. I met this other organization that they're doing something similar. And I think, you know what, Lisa, if you speak to B might be able to help you or teach you how to speak in a different accent, whatever the case might be. So I'll leave it for that at now. Thanks.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Victor, for those examples. Maybe just to push the button a little bit further, everything that you have mentioned and even what B and Nasha mentioned, they seem so lovely. They seem very easy in practice, but we recognize that when engaging with clients, at the end of the day, we are all human beings, and sometimes it is difficult to avoid conflict. So, Victor, have you ever experienced a challenging situation when you were in practice? And how were you able to navigate some of these challenges and still, at the end of the day, be able to maintain that relationship in a manner that is ethical and respectful?
Okay, so thank you. Yes, as you mentioned, dealing with your fellow human beings, conflict will always come about. Sometimes it's as simple as just a simple misunderstanding. You misheard me or misquoted me, or you assumed something about me that I didn't say or I didn't do, and then you stick and you're stuck in a rut. And some of this, there's some clear indications that you can see. So you must be able to take up some proactive conflict resolution mechanisms. You can see it, and before it ripens, before it becomes too big to tackle, I would recommend having a sit down and bringing it forth. If I can recall, while working, I worked at the Law Society over in Leamington Spa, over in the UK. And in my department, we used to deal with solicitors and when they maybe done something to do something wrong in regards to their service. There was two departments. One was dealing with solicitors' service, and the other one was dealing with solicitors' conduct. It was all conducted over the phone. So if Lisa calls me and complains about the solicitor, but something happens, because most of them sometimes, I'm sorry to say, some were maybe pensioners who just needed somebody to talk to. They had some case and they just need somebody to talk to, because it's not like the African culture where we're always visiting our parents or our grandparents and staying together. They live alone and they have this small case or big case. But since the solicitor has not kept up, they keep calling you and asking you, Victor, how's my case gone? Sooner or later, they get tired of you because they think that you're not progressing their case. And because all the calls were recorded, then my manager will be able to listen in. And the simple thing, just as handing the case to somebody else, just listen to it, especially you've seen, where's your manager? I need to speak to your manager. If you just hand it over the case to somebody else, they listen to them and you're listening there, and then they hand it back to you. It's a simple, just breaking that, coming out of that route. It really helps a lot. This is where you can consider third-party mediation. But also, when it comes to after the assignment, yes, we've closed it and there's no bad blood. Please conduct some sort of debrief so that at least you show, and at the end, when everything is settled, everybody's that much happier. And people usually remember the last thing that you say or do to them. If you've ever been in a job, the way you are let go or the way you are fired is the way you will remember that organization or that manager or country director who let you go. So it is that last thing that if it's the post-project review, just come back to them and tell them, yes, everything works out okay. I got you exactly what you wanted. If it's that M&E framework that I spoke of before, here it is, it looks very good. And they will be able to remember that, wow, that is what they'll remember about Victor, not the small issue that you actually had in the beginning. And then as much as possible, as Nasha also highlighted, please maintain those professional boundaries. Some of us really like to joke, but you must be able to read the room, to be able to know, oh, this one is a very meat and potatoes kind of person. He doesn't like any jokes or she doesn't like any jokes. Let's keep it straightforward. And even if it's not your style, because you're the one who's been contracted, then you have to find a way to adopt to that style. Thank you.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much, Victor, for those amazing, conflict management tips, and also for sharing your own example on how you managed conflict. So we're going to move on to another, very important conversation still on affiliation. And it also causes a lot of drift and a lot of conflict sometimes. There has been a practice that sometimes is not so healthy, which I have observed, whereby sometimes as you're negotiating with a client, there's this belief that maybe they feel you might not be as deserving for the amount of remuneration that you're requesting for, just on the virtue of being an African consultant, or even sometimes a female consultant. So I'm going to invite B to just help us understand how we can better strategize around fair remuneration and recognition for the level of efforts that we are able to give and provide to our clients. So B, how can consultants better strategize around fair remuneration?
I agree that this is indeed a very contentious subject, and even more contentious for me as a young person and a woman who also comes from the global south. I find that it's usually a bit of a double whammy or triple whammy in terms of the challenges that one has to navigate through when it comes to strategizing around fair remuneration. But I think one of the most important things to consider as a consultant is what the global trends are on remuneration, and specifically based on like what spaces you're working in and what the funding space for that looks like as well, because you find that different spaces or different sort of spheres in the global health space, for instance, have a little bit more funding than others. And also based on like where foreign policy of different countries is at, then that also impacts funding for different spaces. I think sexual and reproductive health is one of them, and that kind of impacts the amount of money that's in the space, so to speak, or how much work is being sort of advertised and how much work there is out there in the first place for an affiliate or a consultant. So that I would say would be one of the first things to consider. And then also just on the same, looking, just as you mentioned, based on the sort of debate from global versus global north versus south, sort of disparities in terms of pay and who the client, so to speak, is in this case. I think by having by kind of researching on those key pieces, it also kind of provides an affiliate with enough background information to be able to sort of strategize around fair remuneration and recognition for their efforts as well. As a young person, it then becomes another uphill battle, because then you have to start justifying why you as a young person are charging the way that you're charging. And something that I've heard a lot is, when I was as young as you, I wasn't charging that much, which I often rebut with, but you weren't doing what I'm doing now. So how could you charge the way that I'm charging now? So that's also something that's always something to sort of have in mind, thinking about the sort of the youth conversation and also the gender conversation that comes up a lot. So you have to be incredibly aware and hyper vigilant of these kind of setbacks as you kind of create your strategy around what your, I would say, your rate card is, so to speak. And then combining that with what does your network look like in terms of when you're sort of resource mobilizing or you're job hunting as an affiliate, what spaces do you have networks in, and how can they also contribute to your strategy around remuneration? Because a lot of the people who, I mean, how would I put it? A lot of headaches around remuneration would ultimately be solved by, some of them, not all of them, would be solved by having conversations with networks. And I think that's worked very much for me. And that kind of feeds into the next question here, where by networking and having different conversations with different people, it kind of puts you in a position where you have a deeper understanding of what would be a fair rate, for instance, what's available in terms of funding for a specific project, how much, what's the availability of that funding as well? Is it like short term, is it long term, and all of that? And then I think that's one piece of it in terms of just looking at it from the affiliate's perspective. But I also think that we need to also look at what organizations, what role organizations can play, or those who are hiring affiliates can play. And I think a big one is transparency around funding and sort of budgets around consultancies and the like, because I think it may be a little unfair to sort of put out an open RFP and inviting people to sort of go through the recruitment process, which oftentimes is very long and tedious. And then get to a point where you're offering maybe a fifth of what that person normally charges. And ultimately you've shorted that person, so to speak, or you've shorted that organization or whoever is sort of being recruited for the consultancy. And I think by having more organizations be upfront about what it is that they have available, what resources that they have available, would ultimately contribute to the conversation around remuneration and recognition. And I think finally having conversations amongst ourselves as affiliates where we can kind of work to standardize the costs amongst ourselves, so that if I say I'm going to charge $1,000 per day and then somebody else is charging $200 per day, they might ultimately be getting the short end of the stick when they could charge a little bit more based on the work and the value that they're providing. And I'm not saying that we should be sort of exorbitant or overcharge or just be, what's the word? A little greedy, for lack of a better way to put it, in terms of how we charge. But I think it's important for us to have these conversations amongst ourselves so that we're able to understand why one person charges the way that they do and ultimately learn from each other. Because I honestly think that's like the biggest foundation. And I think that's what has worked the most for me, is learning from other people what they charge and why they charge the way that they charge, and then using that to kind of sort of create a framework for myself in terms of, this is the skill set that I have to offer, and based on this skill set or based on the different or even the scope of work in itself, this is why I'm charging the way that I'm charging. So yeah, those are kind of the main things that I've thought about. And then finally, as bringing it back into the youth and young women conversation, I think we, as young people and as women, a lot of the time we shortchange ourselves, because I think this is especially for young women in Africa, particularly, or the global South. We're made to feel like asking for money is greedy. And if you ask for more money, you're ultimately even more greedy and your priorities are not straight. And I think that's something that we need to unlearn. So one thing that I do is I work very closely with my male colleagues and I ask them, how much are you charging? And they tell me how much they're charging, and then I use that sort of as a basis and then add tax and then go from there. So yeah, those are kind of my thoughts around the remuneration space. Thank you. Back to you.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much, B. You've given us so many amazing tips. And maybe just to throw the ball back around the issue of standardization, different consultants or affiliates will justify their rate card based on their experience. Someone will say, I have a doctorate, so this is why I would charge XYZ for a strategic plan. Someone else will say, hey, I am just a self-starter within the consultancy space. And maybe the most experience I have had has been 1 year experience out of school, and I just have a bachelor's degree. So I will charge way less. So when these disparities, when clients witness this kind of disparities, it sort of adds a bit of fuel on why, remuneration remains unfair to a certain extent. So how can you, or what thoughts do you have for consultants to begin to, galvanize themselves around what is fair? And this is just from the consultant lens, so that when we are presenting this as one voice to the clients, then they can be able to appreciate the kind of rate cards that we are offering them. Also, just keeping in mind that the consultancy space is quite broad, and sometimes it's difficult to bring in consultants to speak in one voice. But what ideas do you think we can begin to embrace just towards making the affiliation space more friendly for experts and also self-starters when it comes to rate cards.
Is that for me or is that general?
Yes, it's still for you. It's
Sorry.
the last question we have for you. Yeah.
Just to clarify, yeah, so just checking. Okay, so could you ask the question one more time, please?
Okay, let me just try and summarize it. You've given us some really amazing pointers. I just wanted us to dig a little bit deeper on the standardization pointer that you shared. And I was wondering, because the affiliation and consultancy space has different people, some who consider themselves as experts, others as self-starters. So how can we begin to have that conversation of standardizing rate cards so that clients can begin to respect whether it's a self-starter requesting for this amount or an expert requesting for this amount? They are more open to remunerating fairly. And also, how can that conversation sort of like help consultants to begin to work less in silos? Because at the end of the day, the ocean is so big for all of us. We can be able to fish and enjoy the fish. So how can we begin this conversation of standardizing from so that the clients can respect our ask more as consultants, despite our level of expertise?
Okay. Well, firstly, I'll start by saying I do not have all the answers for this specific question. It is something that I still am thinking about, and anyone in the session or in the meeting can provide further thoughts. But I think something that comes to mind often for me is ultimately, if we're not talking to each other, then we're not able to sort of find convergence or consensus on different sort of pieces. And I think this comes true when we talk about remuneration, particularly just based on the fact that no two people will ever charge exactly the same based on different contexts, based on different different experiences that they have. But I think there is a level of sort of similarity in terms of if you're applying for, or if you work in a specific field, because a lot of the times affiliates choose a specific field and kind of work in that realm. So for me, my main space is around global health, SRHR, gender equality, that sort of bucket right there. So a lot of my engagement will be with such organizations or with such consultants. So it's kind of by building a wealth of knowledge on the organizations that I've worked with, and then also the affiliates or consultants that I've worked alongside, and then sort of coming up with a framework based on that. And I think once again, back to discourse and having conversations around the same, what is fair based on X numbers of experience. For instance, what is fair based on the skill set that one has, for instance, and then also thinking about what the scope of work is, because, and that's something that varies a lot. So I think those three key pieces would be ultimately what we as consultants would need to think about as we kind of work together to kind of have conversations around standardizing remuneration, or at least leveling the playing field, so to speak. And I think this is particularly important for consultants when we're talking about the global North versus the global South conversation, where a lot of times certain organizations would rather hire people from the global South just because they would be deemed to be cheaper, which is not necessarily the case. Or you might find people would prefer consultants or affiliates from the global North based on a perceived sense of experience, which is not necessarily accurate, so to speak. So I think by sort of having those conversations around how do we demystify those different spaces or those different conversations, I think that would ultimately help us a lot in the space.
Thank you. Thank you so much, B, for those amazing words of wisdom. And I hope our audience, you are taking notes, because this conversation is a masterclass by itself. So moving on, we have spoken about meaningful and ethical engagement, or rather relationship management. We have spoken about fair remuneration. And the more I keep listening to our panelists and I'm connecting these conversations, currently what's coming to mind is how the affiliation or the social impact space is to a certain extent siloed. Everyone is working, thinking about themselves only, and sometimes we begin to lose, our goal, and the main goal still remains creating sustainable impact. So I am going to invite Awar to please share with us how can we begin to de-silo the consultancy industry? Because just listening to what Victor was talking about, and also what B was talking about around how remuneration, it's a clear indication that there's a lot of siloness. So how can we begin to de-silo this industry and encourage cross-disciplinary but also cross-sector collaboration among consultants and affiliates? Awar?
Thank you. Like Beatrice, I do not have all the answers, so I'll try to answer this as honestly as possible based on my observation, I would say, and some of my experiences. I think the first thing would be to normalize a lack of specialization. So sometimes, or a lot of times, from my experience, when I say I'm a fundraiser, people ask me, so what sector? Like which area within the NGO space do you fundraise? I'm like, I don't specialize in a sector. And that's very confusing. But there are times when, even when you have, yet my background is in human rights education, and it's in human rights. That was my introduction to the nonprofit sector. We have our associations or places where we started or where we built from. And a lot of times we're also passionate about specific causes, which is why we follow a specific line, right, as consultants. But I think it's also important to normalize having interests outside of those areas and being non-specialized in all the work that we do. I think that creates a very interesting interdisciplinary approach where I know there's this saying where we say being a jack of all trades, right? And I think the full thing is it's like a jack of all trades, but a master of none. But it's better to be a master of none than a master of one. So it allows for us to explore different areas of work and more collaboration within this space. And that's the second thing I'm going to mention. It's more collaboration within the space. So as consultants, or as people who work in the social impact sector, I find that unless, I don't know, you've worked together or you're in a partnership within the organization that you're working in, it's very difficult for consultants to collaborate, I found. And especially when you're starting out, it's also very difficult for people with more experience to collaborate with people with a little less experience than we do. And I think it's because we make an assumption of what people's capabilities are. I think it's important for us to be able to have more coalitions. We need to coalesce more within the space, within the industry, and especially from a multidisciplinary point of view and from a multi-experience point of view as well. Because I think some of the most beneficial work I have done has been based on being paired with somebody who had more experience than I did within a specific subject matter, and vice versa as well. So I think that's the second thing, is we need to get into a habit of coalescing more. And I know that we form associations. I know accountants have their own association. I know our fundraisers have their own association. But it's so very difficult to hear that there is an association for, you know, social impact consulting. Like, I haven't had something like that. Like, kind of like an umbrella kind of thing. And I don't think it requires us to be organized proactively in that way for us to build those kinds of relationships. And I think we need to get into the habit of doing that in the same way that we do BD. So when you're in the same way that we look for projects, in the same way that we source for clients, I think we need to actively and proactively source for partnerships. And that goes to the third thing. It's in terms of creating a multi-stakeholder approach within the consulting space and within the for impact space. And I say for impact space to also include social enterprises, right? There's always this kind of division, this invisible line between NGOs or PBOs now, as we should call them, public benefit organizations, and social enterprises. It's like there's this invisible line, yet we are all for impact. And that's how I prefer to call them now. I think you've heard me say for impact a couple of times, and it's because I find that nonprofit does not really capture the essence of what it is that we do. But we work towards creating impact for the people who benefit from the work that we do. So I think in the same way that we need to have a more multi-stakeholder approach. I think that will really help in de-siloing, because if we bring down that barrier and we say, so we are in there for impact space, what does this mean for us? And being able to reach across the aisle, it's incredibly important. And I found that it is way easier for us to do this when it's a voluntary enterprise. But I don't know why that does not translate when we are working for pay. And yet we are still within the for impact space. And a good example is if you serve within a board, you have different people coming in with different expertise from very diverse sectors, but you're all working towards, you know, strong governance within the institution that you're in. So you have a common goal, but you come from all these different places, and that is done intentionally, right? To strengthen the governance within that institution. What we do not do is we do not translate the same way, because we do not network the same way within the space. And I think that's something that we need to change. I don't know what it will take, to be honest. There has to be some individual will for that to happen. And there also needs to be a bit of trust building as well. Because the fact of the matter is, when you're within the consulting space, it's quite competitive. You want to be able to get as many projects as possible. But again, to work with others, you walk far. You walk alone, you walk fast, but you do not walk as far as you would with other people. And I think that's something that we need to start, that's a culture we need to start embracing more within the for impact space, and especially as consultants within the for impact space. I would say that's something incredibly important. Something that I learned working at ICG, which was interesting, that I think is a culture that we can adopt, that was incredibly beneficial within the organization. So it was a consulting firm that I was working for. And how the work was organized was quite similar to how law firms kind of organize their work. So you see, there's a piece of culture that has been picked from a different sector and was kind of brought into that. So the work that we were primarily doing was fundraising, right? And when you think about that, and let's say there's certain pieces of work that's assigned, like different organizations are assigned, different projects are assigned. You would imagine that if I'm a fundraiser and I'm given this organization, let's say, I'll give a practical example. I was given an assignment for a school called Unity School, and they had a lot of org optimization and fundraising needs. So you'd imagine that if I'm given Unity School, then the immediate expectation is I will come up with a proposal for their fundraising and kind of hit the ground running, right? Or set it up based on whatever SOPs I have within ICG. However, how we used to divide the work was interesting because we had a system where there was a primary, like a project primary, who would be like the overall project lead. And then we had a secondary, and in some cases we had a primary, a secondary, and an editor, and a quality assurance person. So you see there's like 4 people. And then depending on the complexity of the project, every task becomes its own project, right? So we have, let's say you needed to do grant research. That's looked at as a different project that is assigned to someone within that system. If you're looking to do budgeting, it's given to somebody else, but then that requires us to be in constant communication with each other. And what that did is, one, it reduced how overwhelming the assignment was for somebody coming new into the team. And it also gave an opportunity for practical learning. And I think if you manage to approach the way we do our work in the same way, like if you're going for the same project and you manage to speak to each other, it's like, okay, so I'm going for this project. And I think I would want your addition for this and these reasons. And you just have an agreement. And I think that's what a good affiliate structure does. It facilitates that. It facilitates that kind of collaboration. And I wish more institutions would think to do the same thing, because it creates that kind of environment of, okay, so this is what I'm coming with. And I think that's the core benefit is you're able to do more. You have more impact. You have more resources shared between the people who are within that partnership or within that association. You have more resources shared, which means ultimately your client also benefits from this rich tapestry of insight and experience in a way that they otherwise wouldn't if you are not in collaboration. And I think that's what a really good affiliate program does, is it creates those opportunities. It creates those spaces for learning, but ultimately everybody gets a piece. So it's, well, you manage to get well paid for a good project that you help to implement. And on the other end, the person who's essentially getting these services is able to have better, stronger impact for their client, which is what I like to call beneficiaries, but for their client, right? So I think collaboration is important, and we need to find ways of building more associations. And I think the best solution, like I said, would be just the same way we approach business development, the same way we approach sourcing for clients is the same way we need to approach sourcing for collaborations. And like I said, a good affiliate program already builds something like that. And I think it's something we need to encourage within the sector. I think lastly, what I would say is look at non-traditional collaborations. Again, I'll speak about this from a fundraising point of view. When I was doing prospecting for a client last year, I found something really interesting that I did not think would have been, like it's not something that crosses your mind. So I was doing research for an environmental-based organization. And we were looking at different options. How can we approach this? Because it was a new organization, everything is built from the ground up. And in the course of that research, I actually came across something interesting. It was a gaming company in the States that had actually, through, I think it was Minecraft, if I'm not mistaken, actually. And what they had done is they essentially set up some kind of tournament with their users, and they raised 100,000 for the Nature Conservancy. And the first thing in your mind is, like, you do not think that video games and, climate change mesh, right? That's not an immediate point of fundraising that you would think about. But they managed to do this. And it's like we need to explore more non-traditional collaborations and efforts across sectors. And I think that's something that would also really, really help build the for impact sector and encourage more people to put more resources towards social causes. And just like as a final close, a form of affiliation that we usually ignore is the CSR bit. When a company creates a nonprofit, a foundation, that's an affiliation, right? Because they share their profits for social impact. And I think if we think about modeling the way we do our work and the way we run our for impact businesses, if I would put it like that, and we construct it in that kind of profit sharing mindset, which is a way that, and by profit sharing, I don't really mean only money. I mean experience, I mean expertise, then I think the culture within the sector will be very different and it will lead to more impact for sure. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Awor. You have given us some really amazing tips and heavy pointers for our consideration. And also thank you for, sharing some of your experiences as you are sharing. I'm going to invite Nasha, still in the spirit of collaborating and collaboration amongst affiliates and within the social impact space. Your story and specifically how you introduced yourself in terms of how your career has been. You are a true example of, cross-sector and also cross-disciplinary collaborations just based on your skills and on your career transition. So how can you encourage us as affiliates to collaborate more, beyond our scope? So, for example, if I win a bid and I do not have specific skills, how then can I bring in another affiliate or another consultant to work with me on this bid? And if possible, please share with us some of your successful examples around this.
Thanks, Lisa. So firstly, like you have said, we all don't know everything, and that sometimes you get an opportunity that requires a set of skills that you don't possess. It's very much important to look for and collaborate with other consultancies or organizations that might have that particular skill set. So I think the first thing you need to do is firstly to identify the right partners or the right consultant that you want to work with. This is the person that possesses the skill sets you are looking for and also is aligned to your vision and the nature of work that you are doing. And then once you identify that kind of person or organization, I would encourage that there will be formal agreements that are set to have a formal relationship around it. That goes to say you can have MOUs or contracts that are written that are clear of the roles and responsibilities. I think I spoke about this earlier on. And then there's also need for regular coordination so that you achieve your attained goal, because if you all start operating in silos yet you have a collaboration, it won't work. So regular coordination where you're updating each other, checking if everything is in check will be very important as well. And also like building trust and transparency. I've spoken about this before. And then what is also very important is embracing diversity, because we are all different. And now that the world is a global village, you might actually be aligned, or the person with a particular skill set is from a different region, country, or even part of the world that's different from you. And for you to work closely and establish a good relationship with that person, you really have to embrace diversity, be it cultural, religious, or anyhow. So it's also very important. And that's how I have managed to work on collaborations with other affiliates that I try to get when I can't fill up the skills that are required. You've asked for an example, right? I think an exciting example that I had previously, I think I worked on a consultancy that was an advocacy and campaigns consultancy on a campaign around putting an end to child marriages in support of the girl child. And because I have a communication background and a very lean background around advocacy, one of the things that I could think of was having media awards, like having journalists write up stories around child marriages that were happening in their region. This was it's something that I thought for Southern Africa. So I had journalists writing. It was more like a competition, so that encouraged journalists to write those stories around child marriages and how to mitigate and everything experiences in the different countries. This was mainly because I was advocating for that, and I wanted to have governments in check around policy making. And I discovered along my journey that I didn't have much capacity to speak to many governments. I was just Nasha uh, from Zimbabwe, and who would governments listen to if I go to government of Malawi? Even if I was going to speak about the organization that I was working for, it was not going to be okay. I wasn't going to achieve the goal. So I actually had to engage the African Union around that. And why did I take that in particular? It's because governments would listen to that. And Africa Union is a strong arm around child marriages, and they advocate for that. So that was one collaboration that I felt like I couldn't do it, but I had to look for a partner that could do that. And in the same time, I didn't get an individual because an individual's capacity was not going to work. That's why I then decided to collaborate with an organization, and that worked very well. And I was actually privileged that the fact that Africa Union actually also had funds that we had to even increase the prize money for the journalists. So it was actually a win-win situation. So I think, yeah, that's how you can collaborate with other affiliates and consultancies.
Wow, thank you so much, Nyasha, and congratulations on that amazing endeavor. Maybe just to follow up is, what do you think of loyalty when it comes to the, collaboration? And is it important for consultants to maintain a certain sense of loyalty, not just for the ones they are collaborating with, but also the organizations that they are offering services for? And what does that look like? Are there barriers to loyalty? For example, if the organization has a scandal, you say, hey, yeah, I don't want to be associated. So what does that look like when it comes to affiliation?
Okay, thank you. So for me, I believe that once you're working with someone and for you to establish a good relationship, you just have to be loyal to that person. Sometimes there might be bad publicity that comes around it, but if you are in that particular space, I guess you have to find out the reasons why the bad publicity is there and probably advocate for that organization or for that particular person that you're working with. That might be maybe their image is being tinted wrongly, or if they actually did whatever they are being accused of, then probably you also need to caution them around you not wanting to be associated with such kind of behavior, but also trying to caution them that they must do right in whatever they're supposed to do. So I think loyalty is very important, because once you're loyal, then you're able to have good relationships and also establish trust and goodwill.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. And thank you, my amazing panelists, for all the amazing insights that you have shared, your experiences, your tips, your best practices. So I would just quickly want us to transition in the interest of time And the part of the reason why we have been having this amazing conversation about affiliation is because development dynamics has been in the process of developing its own affiliate program. And I will be shortly inviting my CEO to speak to us more about this and also open up the opportunity to our audience should they want to be part of this. But I am going to quickly invite Awor just in 1 minute to tell us how does affiliation as an innovation shape trends in the future of social impact consulting, and with your relationship with development dynamics so far, how do you think this is going to be a trend shift in general? Awor?
Okay. Good question. When I think about it, like right off the top of my head, I think I just gave the example of how in some instances, for-profit companies create non-profit entities and kind of do this like profit sharing thing as a way of creating social impact through those institutions. And I think what affiliation does, and a program like the one that Development Dynamics is launching, what that does is it creates, first, there's a lot of resource sharing, not just in terms of people, in terms of finances that's going towards building good project outcomes and impactful ventures. But there's also an area of affiliation that we don't think about often, and it's about brand sharing. And when you do brand sharing, it's a good way of getting exposure for the brand itself, but it's also a really good way for building trust for the consultant themselves, who is an affiliate, and for the institution itself. So I think this is I think it's a novel approach for an entity like this to be building an affiliate program that's tailored toward for impact causes and work around the sector. It's again not something that we've seen often, as we've heard from the experiences of the other panelists as well. And I think there's really big opportunities for growth here. And I say that in an individual capacity and also like as a group in general for all the affiliates and Development Dynamics as an institution. And I think there's also really good opportunities for innovation through affiliation that we may not have an opportunity to explore otherwise. Because through an affiliate relationship, it's a consistent conversation. It's an open loop, right? And there's constant feedback there. Like Nasha just said, comparatively, when you have a consultancy where it's limited by time and this specific scope of work, and when we're done with that, we're done, right? But affiliate relationships means there's a conversation that's ongoing. There's always lessons learned. There's a lot of building strong collaborative culture, and it will really help address the de-siloing thing. Like I had mentioned before, good affiliate programs does help remove some of these silos that we've seen in the sector. So I think it's really exciting, and I'm actually looking forward to seeing how much it grows, but I know for a fact there's going to be a lot of innovation, a lot of collaboration, a lot of growth brand-wise for DD and for the affiliates themselves. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Awor. And I will quickly just read out a question that's on the chat box before I welcome my CEO, just to help us close in on this conversation. And one of our audience members called Brenda Barth says that in your experience, what are some effective strategies for decentralizing resources and putting them in the hands of youth-led organizations? Victor, you have been quite quiet, so I'm going to quickly throw this question from our audience to you. In your experience, what are some effective strategies for decentralizing resources and putting them in the hands of youth-led organizations? In 1 minute, please help us answer this question.
So in 1 minute, on top of my head, I think because the youth are said to be very innovative, and that is true, they don't have so many things tied to them. Please, let's do more. Let's offer them those spaces, whether it's the hackathon that we have to solve a problem, because the problems usually face them. If we have some grant money available, I would prefer to have those competitions. We all know the younger they are, the idea would be fail fast, fail young, so that at least you don't spend too much money. If you look at the African Startup Graveyard, you'll see organizations that have spent millions of dollars, and then after 9 months, 1 year, they've all closed down. But if you had that process of ideation and iteration, the sooner it is they fail, then you know what the problem is. And it is, you learn more from a mistake than when you get it right. When you get it right, you end up having a chip on your shoulder, and you think you're King Midas, that anything you touch will eventually turn to gold. So given those opportunities, small time opportunities to be able to grow. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Victor. I also see Bee's hand is up. I think she'd like to build more on this. So Bee, just 1 minute to answer, and then we can proceed to invite our CEO.
Yeah, sure. I'll speak very, very quickly based on my experience in the development sector, where in my previous role, a lot of my work revolved around giving sub-grants to youth-led organizations. And I did that in about 10 countries total. And I would say that the biggest thing has to be intentionality from within the organization that is providing these resources. And I'll stick to that just to save time, because I find that as long as there is that intentionality, then there is a concerted effort to create these opportunities for youth-led organizations, because unfortunately, or at least, yeah, recent data shows that there are most youth-led organizations are operating on less than $10,000 a year, which is not enough for them to be able to deliver the type of impact that we need. But ultimately, we also recognize that for us to achieve the level of impact that we need, youth-led organizations are the best to deliver, such impact, especially on the African continent, where majority of the population is young people, and who best can solve problems that young people are experiencing? It's young people themselves. So for donors, there has to be a level of intentionality to be able to provide these resources and the necessary capacity building that comes with these resources. Because a lot of the times, the criteria that donors put in place for certain levels of funding comes hand in hand with a lot of capacity that most of these youth-led organizations do not have. So we need to be super intentional in the sense that we're saying, okay, yes, we're going to give you this money, and aside from just giving you the money, we're also going to provide you with the capacity to be able to spend this money and to use these funds to not only sort of develop your own organization, but also to deliver the impact that we want you to deliver through this funding. So I think that's super important, and also sort of putting that into our structures. So for Transform Health, for instance, I was managing 6 national coalitions in 6 countries. And part of that was very intentional in saying, okay, your national coalition has to have one leadership there has to be youth-led organizations as part of the leadership of the national coalition. And then a certain amount of the budget of the coalition has to be set aside for youth-led organizations to also be able to contribute to the overall objectives of the coalition. So they're not taking a backseat, but rather they're actively contributing to the objectives. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Well, thank you so much, Bea, for that. Brenda, I hope your question has been answered. In the interest of time, because we're supposed to be closing our webinar at exactly 6:30 p.m. East African time, please allow me to welcome the CEO of Development Dynamics to unveil this amazing opportunity that we have for all of you. And if we still have more time, we are going to continue answering some questions in the chat section. And if not, I will be matching some of the questions with our panelists, and they can be able to support the audience beyond this conversation. So quickly, let me welcome Mr. and Dr. Maxi Eric Gitao, CEO of Development Dynamics, to come and unveil to us the amazing opportunity that he is presenting to the entire world. Dr. Maxi,
give Lisa her flowers for making quite a bit of noise on this. Sorry, I'm hearing myself. Just a minute. All right. Yeah. So I Sorry, there was an echo on my end. My apologies. I'm really grateful for first of all, just for all of us creating the time to join this conversation. I think it's an important conversation. Personally, I'm learning a lot. I realize often that I am not the brightest person in the room, and that makes me feel good about the room I'm in. So in this room, I am I'm here not necessarily to offer any lessons, not to give any promise, not to add any other thing on top of what each of the panelists has spoken, and but just to first of all thank you. Time is precious, and that all of you, both participants and guests, have created the time to be here for the period we've been. I'm grateful. I'm grateful for that a lot. And I also really want to thank Lisa for taking this on. Lisa's journey is actually very interesting. Today, or rather this month, serves as her 2 years working with Development Dynamics. And so happy anniversary to you. And it's also her birthday today. So happy birthday to you as well. And but I think she and the team at DD that has been over the past year or so ideating a lot about how do we offer something that is different, something that is to like-minded people, like-minded organizations that could benefit from the power of coming together. I believe genuinely that, as you know, you've mentioned in this call, and as you all know, that going far happens when we go together. I believe that we, through the affiliation of each other to each other, DD as sort of the DD affiliates program as sort of an opportunity to connect ourselves, the work that we all are doing, and the opportunities that exist out there to bring about impact. I think we have scratched the surface of what we do, and we figured and seen that it doesn't make sense if it's not going to be of impact, you know. So we are all very keen to drive towards results, to drive towards impact. And we realize that that process can be very lonely at times, because we, the clients and the communities that we work with perhaps don't have as much of the resources, which includes time as a key resource to do some of the work that is required in order to achieve impact. And just listening to the expertise that's brought, at least on this call today, expertise around organizational development and resilience, expertise around sustainability and growing an organization or an initiative from one level to the next. I am awed at just how much impact we can have when we work together. So the affiliates program has been now running for around 6 months. We have some, I've seen in this call some few affiliates who have worked with DD, where at times we, just as you exactly put it on the call, we have an opportunity that we feel we either don't have the bandwidth for or the skill sets for, and then we invite someone who's registered in our affiliates pool to partly journey with us in that particular initiative, but also look together as to what can we do more and what can we do better. And therefore, even as we unveil this particular program, and I think the term that's been used is a matchmaker. As we unfold this or unveil this matchmaking, we are not calling it service, a matchmaking platform for us to work with each other for impact, for investments, for innovation. I can only hope that we have this to be as affiliate-led as possible. And therefore, the fact that Lisa herself is a senior affiliate and it's being led, this program itself is being led from an affiliate's mindset, I hope the conversations can continue. I hope we can shape it through this call. We can work together towards bridging them. The opportunities that we can see in the future, we can work together towards arriving at them and towards making greater and more impact. So I'm glad. I cannot wait for the tools that we create together, for the resources that we curate together, for the networks that we scale together, for the impact and goals that we achieve as part of our collective action. And I think I hope to get to know each and every one of the affiliates at a personal level, and to get into your networks as you also get into our networks, and for us to really elevate our voices. And also, as someone said on the call, at times we also are activists. We have to be activists for our space and for this thing that is very dear to us. So we hope to use the affiliates as a platform for more, as a platform for better, as a platform for an elevated voice, and as a platform for us to direct our passion, our expertise, and our commitment to social impact. I'm grateful, and I hand it back to Lisa to do the vavavoom things that she does best.
Thank you so much, Dr. As he has mentioned, we recently introduced our affiliates program. This was an idea that we had at the beginning of the year when we were, doing our organizational strategy. And it has been growing slowly. But now where we are at, we can say we are fully ready. We have an engagement plan ready. And on the chat box, I have shared with our audience, should you be interested to be part of this amazing program, we are still open to receiving talents, and I have shared a link there with you. However, the faces that you're seeing on our screen currently are the affiliates that have been fully registered by Development Dynamics. And what I mean by registration is that these are the ones who not only expressed interest, but have also had the opportunity to meet our team, share with us some of their expertise, and even went as far as signing an MOU. We still have many who are registered but have not yet completed these steps. And that is why we are still open to having this amazing cohort, which I will say for now, we do not have a time frame because opportunities arise as time goes by. So we are not going to limit you to be an affiliate for just a year or a few months, unless that is a decision of your own. So meet them. These are their faces. If you'd want to learn more about their amazing skills and talents, please go on our website because we have profiled them in detail. And also, I recognize you have had the opportunity to listen to some of them in this panel discussion. And I just want to give a special shout out to Awar NB for contributing to the conversations that I'm seeing are happening in the chat space, whereby the audience is asking questions and they are, responding to them. So thank you so much for that. A question that has come in is, how inclusive is the program? We are, for lack of a better, percentage, 1,000% inclusive. And what I mean by this is we are open to diversity, because that is one of our principles and values as development dynamics. We are not limited to just the CSO space, but we are also accepting affiliates from the corporate world, from the leadership, political leadership and governance world, from all types of activists. We are open to having as much diverse talent as possible in this pool. And we will be, some of the opportunities we'll be providing through this program is matching you with job linkages as consultants to our clients, introducing you to our networks, as you see the faces on the screen, profiling you on our website so that you can also be able to be targeted based on your skills by our clients in the communities we serve, for you to be able to work and also collaborate in learning materials such as toolkits, blogs, and frameworks with you. So the opportunities are endless, the opportunities are limitless, and you have all been officially welcomed to be part of this amazing journey with us. I recognize time is about to end, so I would just want to give a quick thank you to our amazing panelists, that was Victor, Awor, Nasha, and B, for creating time to help us understand what affiliation is all about, and also them sharing their own experiences as affiliates in the social impact sector. And feel free to sign up, because you're now going to have the opportunity to engage with them further once you're part of our affiliate program. So that is all from us today on the last Thursday for July, which was navigating the social impact space through the social impact ecosystem, through affiliation. And stay tuned, because next month in August, we are going to be having another last Thursday session that's going to be co-hosted by one of our associates around social impact financing. And I have seen even some of the conversations that were coming in the chat box were around resources, resource mobilization, and fundraising. And you have heard from the experiences of some of our panelists, such as B and Awor, on their fundraising experiences. So this will be the perfect opportunity for us to convene again under the guidance of Moses White, be able to speak about social impact financing. What are some of the emerging trends? What are some of the challenges? How do we strategize better to milk as much resources as possible, from the people who are the resource holders, but not just getting the resources, but how do we convert these resources to impact? And I look forward to seeing all of you then, and thank you for showing up for us today. We love you, we appreciate you, and have a blessed evening. We value your time and your commitment. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much.
Thank you.